have Tom come onto the stage. You're talking about event API products, maximizing the value of your EDA. What does EDA mean?
Event-driven architecture. Hi, Jennifer.
Oh, I've never seen it written that way. I've never.
Yeah.
Abbreviated.
Yes, event-driven
Okay.
architectures, event APIs, right? Discussing how we can kind of elevate event APIs from just being events to a product you can actually consume and make available to your business customers, right? Whether that's across your organization or outside your organization. So,
okay, can you hit play on that so it fills the screen?
Yep, there we go. How's
Perfect.
that?
Thank you so much. Take it away, Tom.
So thanks very much, Jennifer. Thanks everyone for joining me today. My name's Tom Fairbairn. I'm a distinguished engineer at a company called Solace. So as Jennifer has alluded to, we're all about EDA, event-driven architectures, how we can create those event-driven architectures, extract value from them, and share the benefits of those architectures with our business stakeholders, whether that's across the organization or outside the organization. Right, okay, let's get started then. So what we're going to talk about is really relate this idea of API products, which I'm sure most people are familiar with. So that's the idea of creating a bundle of REST APIs that fulfill a specific business need, and how that relates and how the kind of tooling and approach to that relates to this idea of event API products. And along the way of that, we're going to talk about a little bit about what an event API is. So once we've kind of seen that maybe there's an approach to how we can create these event API products, we'll then talk about what kind of process we need to go through and what kind of tooling we'll need to create these event API products. And following on from that, we'll show how we can do that in Solace's toolset in this domain, which is PubSub plus Event Portal. Okay, so what are event API products? And what are API products and how do they relate together? So if you think of how you might create REST APIs, typically we follow this kind of north-south composition kind of flow, right? Typically we have at the bottom layer, we have our kind of system style APIs, which are useful for applications to talk to each other. But maybe some of those APIs actually are useful at a higher level within our organization. We might bundle together one or more of those APIs to create something, in MuleSoft terms might be an experience API. If you talk in the Gartner terms, they talk about these idea of composable packaged business capabilities, right? So you have this idea of an application or a subsystem being wrapped up, being able to be composed together. And the way that you do that composition, you manage it, is you have these certain interface. So it might be user interface. It may be a set of REST APIs that are bundled together, and those become an API product, right? What you're doing is you're bundling together related APIs that fulfill a specific business objective. It may be as simple as allowing Tom to log on to his e-commerce website, for instance. Now, implicit in all of this is the idea that what you're not doing here is bundling together and creating a tactical solution to a given problem at a specific set in time. This is more of a strategic thing where you're saying, actually, these APIs are of so much use that they make a real difference to the business. They're providing long-term value. What that means is that if we're going to kind of look at these as products, then we're going to have to move to this whole product mindset. And that means we need to have things like a roadmap for the product, right? Potentially, we might want to monetize this as a product, but definitely we're going to have to look at it from a life cycle point of view. So if we make changes to things, which we inevitably will do, we have to be careful about the effects that has on people that are consuming these APIs. So we need to come up with a way of ensuring that the people that are consuming these APIs are kept up to date, and things properly versioned, properly communicated with. And that means we probably need some kind of product manager there who's taking care of all of this. And of course, the way we expose and publish these API products to our community is generally through a developer portal, right? So that our consumers can log on, they can look at, say, an open API specification and understand what our REST API does. Now, I mentioned this idea of Gartner's kind of composable business capabilities. It's interesting now that Gartner are now bringing into this idea of this business capability, the interfaces that are exposed to it. They're saying not only do you need a traditional API-based interface along with your user interface, but you also potentially need an event API interface too. So what are they? Well, fundamental to the concept of an event-driven API is that this is an API you're going to consume that uses a push model rather than the pull model. In other words, rather than you as a consumer requesting data, I'm going to push that data towards you as a consumer as and when I think it's useful for you to have. So kind of the simple way I like to explain this is, I'm sure we're all used to the idea that we're driving family in the car, right? There are children in the back, and the children are constantly saying, you know, are we there yet? That's a pull model. I'm requesting data. Are we there yet? Probably a less frustrating, as I'm sure many of us are aware, way of doing things is to say, okay, we're not there yet, children. Do you know what? I'm going to tell you when we are there. And that's our push-based approach, right? We're pushing the data as and when it becomes available. And we can look at that kind of that request, are we there yet, as a subscription to our are we there yet event, right? The fact of us arriving is this event. We know our children have requested interest in that event. They've subscribed to that notification, so we're going to send that to them. And you can see here, Gartner here have a full description. I'm not going to read that out. But one of the key points they say there is that our architects and developers have to think about a new approach to how we're going to manage these events and how we're going to manage them. Because RESTful APIs have their place, but in some cases, they may not be sufficient. All right. So one of the things we're keen to express at Solace is that our traditional REST, request-response synchronous API, is very much complementary to this whole idea of event APIs and event-driven architectures. So let's look at how that might play out. So I think we're all used to the whole e-commerce idea. So let's have a look at how these two may match. So let's imagine we're trying to place an order. So our customer is going to say, I want to place an order. Now, this is a request response push kind of model. Pull kind of model. I want to place an order and I'm going to get back a confirmation, probably an order number, right? So that's very much suited to a traditional REST API. So let's look at what might happen downstream to fulfill that order. Well, probably we're going to need to interact with inventory to allocate some inventory to the order. And obviously, we're going to want to ship that piece of inventory to the customer. And there are probably going to be some updates like, you know, the order has been dispatched. We're going to be delivering it tomorrow, that kind of thing. But we're also probably at the back end, we're probably going to want to start interacting with our customer relationship system, in that we want to record we've had some interactions with our customer, maybe do some surveys, that kind of thing. Now, the point here is that once we've confirmed the order to the customer, we don't want the customer to have to constantly query us to say, what's the status of my order, right? Once we've allocated some inventory, perhaps, you know, scheduled a dispatch, perhaps we want to tell the customer, hey, we want, by the way, good news, your order's been dispatched. When our shipping has been accepted and we want to update the customer, hey, it's going to be delivered tomorrow, we probably want to push that to the customer rather than, again, have the customer constantly request the update. So you can see here that there's a place for both. So REST APIs are good for kind of peer-to-peer data exchange. And here's a key one, passing of control. If you think about the customer when he's ordering, he's passing control of that exchange to the order management system. And the order management system decides when and where things are done. Event-driven APIs are good for one-to-many distribution of data, particularly if that's time-sensitive data, or kind of on the converse of that, time-insensitive data. So if you look at our exchange here, perhaps our CRM system, actually it doesn't have to be updated in line with inventory and shipping. Now, the key here is that we need to manage all of these APIs. We need to manage our REST API. That's probably well dealt with. Talk to the API vendors about that. How are we going to manage both, and how are we going to manage these event-driven APIs? And furthermore, there's some other things we need to think about. We've got this idea of these events being generated and going into multiple consumers. But what about other stakeholders? So what about, for instance, we might have a price comparison website here that's interested to know that we've got new products for sale. We might want to keep our shipping provider up to date with, for instance, when our inventory has been allocated. So if we want to create new products, probably being able to bring in these events to update those new products is a useful idea. But if you think about it, in much the same way that we have REST API products, we're going to need event API products because there are multiple events, just in the way there are multiple REST APIs, that we need to consume. So let's drill into that in a bit more detail. So just in the same way that we had bundles of REST APIs, in the event-driven space, we're going to have many event APIs, and they may be shared across different consumers. So if we look at our order management system, we've got a REST interface where orders are coming in, and as a result of that, we've got events coming out like order received, processed, and shipped. In our warehouse system, we're probably allocating stock, and that's an event update, and maybe there's new product that's come into the warehouse that's now available. And in our catalog, there's a lot going on there, but potentially one of the things is that there's a new product that's now ready to sell. And if we look at our marketing team, they may be wanting to launch promotions, right? So this could be, 2 for 1 or, extra 50% free, that kind of thing. So we've got a whole bunch of events in the middle there. But if we think about things from an application lens, and I don't just mean a piece of code, I mean an application in terms of a piece of code all the way up to a business capability. If we look at our delivery service provider here, well, when we get an incoming event, we probably want to say, you know what, I'm going to allocate a shipping ID to that. When the payment has been received and the order's ready to go, we probably want to notify our DHL or FedEx or wherever other delivery providers are available, that we're ready to start really getting going with this order now. And then once we've allocated stock and we're ready to ship the order, well, that's definitely the point at which we need to say to the delivery service provider, come and pick it up, right? So if we think about things from the application point of view, we want to consume all of those 4 events. Okay, that's fine. So what about inventory management? Well, if I'm allocating stock to an order, I need to take that out of inventory. If there's a new product available that's just coming to the warehouse, or we're ready to ship a completely new type of product, I need to know about that as well. So from our inventory management application, there's another related set of events. Now, notice that they overlap, just in the same way that a REST API, system REST API may overlap as well. And you can extend this down. So for instance, our price comparison tool is probably interested in new products and promotions. So you can hopefully see that as you kind of progress towards the right here and you start thinking about things from a application consumption point of view, you're going to start bundling these events together. So we could, if I just go back to that slide, we could expose to our delivery service provider our 4 events there. But that's inefficient, difficult to understand, and difficult to manage. What if we could bundle all of those related events, even though they're coming from different systems, into a single order status product that we can manage and look after as a single entity? We could do that obviously for our inventory product as well. Now, how are we going to expose that to our user, our inventory management system? Well, it turns out that there's an open standard. In Solace, we love open standards. That in much the same way that Open API specifies how you can consume a REST-based API, Async API specifies how you can consume an event-based API. And this can be any kind of event API. It could be a webhook, or it could be something like it could be more event-based, like connecting to an event broker and consuming those events directly. Now, if you think about this price comparison website here, what we've done is we've introspected the events that are available to us as individual events. We've seen how they're flowing perhaps to our order status and inventory product and thought, do you know what, maybe there's extra value we can provide here. Maybe there's extra things we can do. And by bundling these events together and providing an interface to do that with, that gives us an opportunity to innovate around what products we can provide, often simply by bundling together existing events, existing data that we've got. And of course, if we manage and think of our events in this single product view, that means we can evolve that product as the events underneath it evolve, because we're thinking about it as a single product. So, the standard example of that is, let's say our stock allocated event is evolving. There's more information that's being put in there. How do we update stock allocated event such that it doesn't break order status and inventory, right? So thinking about these things in this product way and managing them in this product way makes that much easier. Okay, so let's think about this from a kind of system point of view. How do we actually do this? Much like you have a similar layer model for REST APIs, you've got a whole bunch of system events flying around. So the classic one might be you've got log data events, for instance, or even heartbeat events, those kinds of things. Maybe you've got user authenticated events. These are all essential events for the operation of our backend systems. Perhaps they're not super useful to our business partners and consumers, right? So we need to kind of look through our events and decide which ones provide that extra level of value. And we can elevate them to enterprise significant events. Once we've done that, obviously we can do this bundling that we've talked about. So we can start picking out from our enterprise events which ones are going to go in a particular business capability. So once we bundle them together like that, we've created our product. We can export a specification of those events, an ASIC API specification. And obviously, typically, you would put that into your developer portal so that your consumer has a place to go to consume them, right? So in the REST API world, you have things like Open API. And in our event-based world, we have Async API, right? So you can see that as you progress up through this layering, the value that you're providing is starting to increase. They're becoming less about inter-application communication and more about a valued product that you're exposing to someone. And you can start thinking about the way and the means in which you're going to publish this product to your consumers. Okay, so practically speaking then, how are we actually going to do this? Well, probably the first thing we need to do is actually understand what events we have. So we need a way of probing into our event-driven interactions and pulling out what we've discovered. So what system events do we actually have? Once we've done that, if we can bring them into a kind of unified view of those events, we can start assessing them. So we can look at our user authenticated event and say, that's kind of application specific. We're not going to worry too much about that. Perhaps our order generated event, we're starting to see that that has more value. Now, following on from our usability and value stage, we're going to start creating these high value events. So because they're high value, we probably want to attach a lot of metadata to them. So we probably want to say, who's the owner? Who's responsible for this event, whether that's producing that event or deciding who can consume that event or deciding what the schema of that event is. We probably also want to put some documentation in there as well. How should this event be used? What does it actually represent? It relates to a particular schema, but what do the individual fields in this context mean? once we've we've gone to that phase, we now have a good understanding of which events are which ones are the high value ones, and we've started to add extra context in them so that we can understand them from a business point of view. Well, now we can start thinking about how we're going to publish those events as this single product, right? And we're going to expose to consumers so that we can derive value from. Now, of course, as with any piece of software, this isn't the end of the story. We need to start thinking about how we're going to manage these bundles of events, these event products. We need to do several things here. If there are changes to the lower system events, we need to understand how that's going to impact our event API products and the consumers of those. We probably also want to evolve both the events themselves. Maybe there's a schema change, as I mentioned earlier, and we probably also want to evolve the product as itself. So perhaps there's new events that are being system events that are being created that we may want to bring into this product because they add extra value. We probably also want to look at how useful this product is. We perhaps want to optimize its use. So we need this full circle of all the way of discovering what events we've got through, adding value to them by understanding them, cataloging them, and then bundling them up as products. Now, the key here is that if we want to create really valuable events, we've got to be able to do this fast. We've got to be able to do this easily because, the faster we do things, the easier it is, the more value we can extract. So how do we do this? Well, moving into this kind of Solace world here, the way we look at this is kind of very similar to how you see REST API gateways and developer portals working. So we see your traditional REST API gateway as the runtime layer. In the event world, that's an event broker. And layered on top of that is you have your API portal, developer portal, and in this case, we've built PubSub Plus Event Portal, which is directly analogous to that in the event-based world. Now, the point of Event Portal is that it can, it's event broker agnostic. So we're not particularly looking to provide this for one particular vendor. In fact, their plan is to open source the whole plugin approach so that you can talk to multiple downstream brokers. And then layered on top of that is you have our views of what's going in your event-based architecture. So you have your applications and your events talking to each other you've discovered. So the phase is you start up our discovery broker that probes into your runtime, brings out the events, which you can upload to our event portal, and you can start associating events with applications to draw up your event flows so that you can then start reasoning about them. You can then bring them into our event catalog so that you can document, track, reason, and communicate with regards to your events. And this enables you to do that bundling of events together and determining which ones are high value. And then you just go into our event portal, event API product portal, where you bundle these events together and you can start saying whether a consumer should publish this event or subscribe to it. And then we can release it to application consumers. And because we're all about the event-driven world, we're not going to just provide a file, right? We provide either a REST API where you can grab the async API spec, or we can host it for you on our website.
Fantastic. Yeah.
There we go.
That looks really great. Thank you for doing that. Please share in the chat any place that if you have, places people can sign up or get more information, please do share it in the chat. Thank you so much for your time, Tom. Have a great day.
Thanks, Jennifer. Thanks, everyone.